Which players could break out of slumps in week 4? We're talking about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is former NFL scout Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, we're wrapping up our week-long run on Locked On Dynasty, and it's been fun. But I've been reminded why we split up this gig. This is a grind. It's good to chat with you every day, but we're gonna change that next week.
Yeah, and we got a lot of other things on this. This is not our only gig out there. So yeah, wrap it up.
Hey, somebody's got to teach the kids PE. I'm glad that's me and not you. I have to say
that's for sure.
Matt, we are looking ahead to the week 4 action today. And, I really was looking at some of the players on my own rosters as I was starting to set lineups. And I noticed a lot of big name players that we are certainly counting on that just haven't gotten it done yet, just have not produced. So I thought that would be the lens that we look ahead to week 4 through for this episode. We'll cover all 4 positions, and we'll talk about several players who, to one degree or another, are off to slow starts this year. Let's start, of course, Matt, with the quarterback position. And we've got a handful of quarterbacks here who have yet to produce a quarterback 1 game through 3 weeks heading into week 4. And when we say QB1, we're talking about the top 12 fantasy scorers of the week. So each of these names that we throw out have not been among the top 12 players in any week so far this season. Some of them have been close. Some of them have been not close at all and very, very disappointing. So I'm going to read the names here, Matt. And as I'm covering some of these, what I really want to know is if one of these guys is going to break into that QB1 range, give you a top 12 game in week 4.
Okay.
Who is that
this is
going to be?
different for us. This is fun.
A little bit different. Yeah, thinking more short term. But some of these players are valuable dynasty assets and are not getting it done yet. Dak Prescott, Dallas Cowboys quarterback, has not been a QB1 yet. They play the Patriots this week. Joe Burrow, probably the most disappointing player on this list. His best finish is quarterback 20. We know he's been banged up, gutted through that game in week 3, but hasn't produced from a fantasy standpoint. They get the Titans. Justin Fields, we talked about earlier in the week. They play the Denver Broncos and just what should be a very ugly game, but maybe one Fields could actually produce in. Your guy, Kenny Pickett, he came as close as you can, man. He had a quarterback 13 finish just last week.
These guys,
yeah, absolutely. So Pickett came close, didn't quite get there. They get the Houston Texans this week. Matt Stafford gets the Colts, and then a couple players. Maybe we're not quite as surprised that they haven't given us that QB1 game. Ryan Tannehill plays the Bengals. Zach Wilson plays the Chiefs. Matt, I see a couple names on this list that could be QB1s, could be top 12 guys this week. Who do you like here?
I'm going to rapid fire this group. Zach Wilson, no chance. Tannehill, very, very, very little chance. I think Cincinnati's D is going to cause problems. Stafford, absolutely. The running thing is just the problem for him, but I think they could have success and get Puka going and all that. Pickett, top 12 is asking a lot, but they faced awful defenses, San Fran and Cleveland the first 2 weeks. And then when they got a below average one in the Raiders, it got a lot better, but he's not a big numbers guy. I meant to say this in our field show because there was so much negative there. It
Yeah.
wouldn't shock me if he goes crazy on the ground in this game. I mean, we saw how badly Denver tackled and where they're at. He might just say screw it and run like crazy. So I can see him having a big game, especially on the ground.
Okay.
Burrow is playing against a pass funnel. I mean, nobody runs on Tennessee, but you can definitely throw on them. And I love that they got Jamar Chase as really involved this past week. But I think his calf is really, 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 really limiting him. And then I'm going to say no on Dak, too, because I think New England's defense is a real handful.
Yeah, I'm worried about New England's defense as well. Burrow's probably my favorite of this group. Obviously, he's our favorite dynasty asset of the group of quarterbacks here, but I am, intrigued by that pass funnel defense that we see from the Titans. Tennessee has allowed 2 QB1 games so far in 3 games, so pretty good chance there. And let's go back to Matt Stafford versus the Colts. The Colts are one of 2 teams this season who has allowed a quarterback 1 game, all 3 games. They've given up 3 QB1 games. Minnesota's the other, by the way. But the Colts have allowed a QB1 game every game this year so far. So I like Matt Stafford's chances here. Love Puka Nacua too, by the way. We don't we already know he's in that top 12 group. At least he has been this year. So we like Stafford. We like Burrow. Maybe Fields gets it going against that Denver defense. And Pickett, by the way, you said you don't necessarily feel great about it. The Texans have not allowed a QB1 game yet this year. So maybe we like the running game for Pittsburgh, but not necessarily.
The run defense is bad.
Yeah, not necessarily the pass game. Burrow, Fields, Stafford, those are the guys we feel good about turning things around in week 4. Matt, we're going to have this same conversation about the running back position and some tough options here. We'll do that next.
Guys, big news. DoorDash now delivers groceries. So we already hit him up on that. My wife was making a meatloaf the other day, and it was super hectic, and she's like, oh no, I forget what it was. I was actually not here, but she told me about it. And she's like, boom, the DoorDash grocery delivery. There you have it. So you got to love that convenience of getting what you want right to your door, delivered when you need it, right to your door. It's phenomenal. So if you need fresh groceries for the week, but don't have time to go to the store, you can get a whole fridge full, the delivery from DoorDash. Get everything you want delivered when you need it right to your door. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that delivers too. So you get exactly what you ordered, or they'll make it right. They're phenomenal about that. So sit back and enjoy quality groceries, just like you picked it yourself. Save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. So get 50% off your first DoorDash order, up to $20 value, when you use the code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. It's a limited time offer, and terms do apply. But that's 50% off, up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app at the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONNFL. Don't forget that's code LOCKEDONNFL for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Now, I've also told you about Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music. I told you I used them a couple weeks ago, right before the NFL season started, to get last-minute Guns N' Roses tickets, and it worked out extremely well. We end up with really good seats, but they have sports, music, as I mentioned, comedy, theater events near you. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So there's flash deals, there's zone deals, easy to buy and find tickets for every kind of event. I like the views from the seats. That was a cool way to figure out exactly how we wanted to do that. So they're obsessed with finding ways for you to save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the minute. Flash deals on sponsor deals for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theaters, and more. And Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Matt, we are previewing week 4's action by looking at some players off to slow starts so far this season. Let's talk about the running back position. I'm going to start with the player that I think has the best chance to really break out. You talked about perhaps Justin Fields runs on the Broncos. Perhaps Javonte Williams runs on the Bears. Williams has been a big disappointment this year. Really, coming back from that injury, maybe we should just be happy he's even on the field. But he hasn't produced yet. Running back 27 is his best game so far. So he could certainly be one of those players to really give us a big fantasy performance this week. Some other names on this list. Dalvin Cook hasn't even come close. RB 33 is his best shot. They play again the Chiefs. Dameon Pierce got close last week, scored a touchdown. Running back 14 last week was his best chance or his best finish so far. Gets your Steelers. Derrick Henry's been really close, 14-13 before he bombed last week versus the Bengals. Joe Mixon also has been close with a couple of RB2 games. They play the Titans. Josh Jacobs, really one of the biggest disappointments of the season so far, but gets to face the LA Chargers. Najee Harris versus Houston, and Ramondre Stevenson versus Dallas. So, Matt, give us one or two guys here who you think could possibly be an RB1 in week 4.
Well, as you and all of our listeners know, I mean, if any of these guys end up with a touchdown or two, there's a really good chance they could end up there. A short touchdown, a plunge, even not have a great day. And that's definitely possible. Derrick Henry, Pierce, etc. Pierce doesn't have any offensive linemen. I mean, I don't blame him at all for his struggles. I think he's just in a really rough spot. I think Dalvin Cook is flat out shot and is on the worst offense in the league. Najee, I don't know, can get to a top 12. Josh Jacobs can, but I still think he looks a little sluggish from his layoff. I don't think he's moving quite as well as he did. I think Mixon is starting to lean towards Dalvin Cook land in terms of being sort of shot, but he's in a great situation, but that's a team you don't run on. So I'm going to go with Henry and Ramondre. I think they're the best two players probably on here, or at least they look the best right this minute. Dallas is a tough one, though, and so is Cincy. So these are all pretty uphill climbs.
Stevenson versus Dallas. I mean, it's been talked about this week. Obviously, this is the revenge game for Zeke Elliott. And I mean, we saw Elliott outrush Stevenson last week. I would not be surprised at all if this is closer to a 50-50 split. And they really let Zeke really let him loose against the Cowboys. I kind of believe in that narrative. I mean, we know
even with Belichick, you think Belichick's into that?
Oh, I think Belichick would be leading that charge.
Okay. It's kind of fun.
I think absolutely that would be, a level of pettiness that we could see from that team. That would not surprise me. And not to mention the Dallas defense is among the best in the league, even with the injuries that they're dealing with. So I would not be on Ramondre. I think Jacobs is probably my guy. The Chargers have given up 3 RB1 games, actually 3 top 24 games so far this season. But going back to the Bears, they lead the league, and this is not a good thing. They've given up 5 games already of top 24 production. So maybe it's Javonte Williams who finally gets going against the Chicago Bears. Matt, let's move over to the wide receivers. We've got another long list here of players that are starting slow, but maybe this is the week. Chris Godwin has not been close. Wide receiver 40 is his best finish. They get the Saints. DeAndre Hopkins started okay. Wide receiver 26 in week 1. It's been downhill very quickly since then. Of course, he is not fully healthy, and I'm not sure we can expect him to be fully healthy for the rest of the season. They play the Bengals. Sure. DJ Moore, wide receiver at 25 and wide receiver 32 the past 2 weeks, get the Denver Broncos, DK Metcalf. Man, I was kind of surprised to see DK's name on this list. I don't necessarily think of him as a player who's been struggling this year, but his fantasy finishes wide receiver 25, wide receiver 39, and wide receiver 18. So he's giving you starter level numbers, but hasn't really broken through with that big game yet. They play the Giants. I believe that is on Monday Night Football. Jalen Waddle, of course, was injured in week 2, missed last week. He's set to return. Tough matchup with the Buffalo Bills. And then Terry McLaurin, another really disappointing player. Wide receiver 69, wide receiver 25, and wide receiver 47. The Commanders play the Eagles this week. Any of these guys stand out as players you could really count on in week 4?
Really count on? I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not sure I'm greatly hesitating to start any of these guys, especially like in redraft where you have smaller rosters and, you draft these guys pretty high. Some notes though that stand out. I mean, DJ Moore probably gets Surtain a lot. I mean, and I think that's real problematic for him. Metcalf's probably the one I'm most confident about because, again, I don't think he's looked bad or there's anything, maybe he's had a little bit of bad luck here and there, and he hasn't had terrible games. I know Buffalo is a really good D, and those safeties eliminate big plays, but that Miami offense might be unstoppable. I mean, and Waddle had 2 whole weeks to recover from his concussion syndromes or symptoms. So I think Waddle and Metcalf are the ones I would be most likely to fire up with the most confidence.
Well, at the beginning of the season, I think every one of these names we listed here would have been considered automatic weekly starters.
Right.
I think that's changed for a lot of them. And I agree with you. The 2 that I still think are locked in starters, you're not even really considering a matchup or any other situations on most typical fantasy teams, certainly dynasty teams, are Metcalf and Waddle. But some of these other names, Hopkins, DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson.
Wilson's the crime. Wilson's the one you feel bad about.
Well, of course. Absolutely.
Of course,
but again, that's part of the game, part of the
that's
story.
The way it works.
Right. So looking at some of the numbers as far as defenses and what they've given up, the New Orleans Saints, that's a Chris Godwin's matchup. Just 2 top 24 wide receiver games allowed so far. Cincinnati Bengals, also 2. That's who DeAndre Hopkins will be playing. Denver, it feels like that terrible defense after what we saw last week. They also have just given up 2 top 24 games. Obviously, one of those came last week versus Tyreek Hill. The Kansas City Chiefs, also 2. That's a popular number there. Buffalo 2 as well, and Philly. They're the odd team out here. They've given up 3 top 24 games. Maybe that's hope for Terry McLaurin, although Sam Howell has just been pretty bad.
Last week was pretty brutal, and the Eagles have pretty darn good corners too. But they also get big leads, and I'm shocked they were the 3 of the defenses because maybe there's a lot of garbage time involved there.
Yeah. All right, Matt, we'll finish up this conversation looking ahead to week 4, talking about some struggling players, and we're going to finish up with the tight end position. We'll do that next.
So I've also told you guys about eBay Motors, and Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football does a tremendous job. Go tune into his podcast. But these guys have teamed up. eBay Motors and Vinny have teamed up. And they're bringing you some great fantasy picks each week, and they're doing it all season long. So whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week he's going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So let's see who he has picked out this week. He's going with Brock Purdy. I like it. He's picked up where he left off as a star rookie passer down the stretch last season with his sharp play in Kyle Shanahan's diverse, loaded passing game this defense and this season. And boy, it is definitely loaded. Purdy is playing off Christian McCaffrey's running as well as delivering nicely through the red zone with his arms and legs. In week 4, Purdy gets a very favorable matchup at home against Arizona's defense. Purdy should manage multiple scores with 250 plus passing yards as San Francisco builds an early lead in another blowout. So I like that quite a bit. So with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. They have everything you need. I mean, even stuff for your baby needs. I mean, they have headlights, roof racks, bumpers. I mean, brake kits, everything you can even imagine, windshield wipers. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. And plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. eBay Guaranteed Fit is available to U.S. customers only. Eligible items only, and exclusions do apply. So check that out at eBay Motors.
Matt, I bet you can guess a couple of these names on this struggling tight end list. It's the name that always seems to come up in dynasty circles. Let's start with Kyle Pitts.
It's mind-boggling.
It's so frustrating. Tight end 22, tight end 41, tight end 15. And this week, Kyle Pitts and the Falcons get the Jacksonville Jaguars over in London, England. And can
I start there? Go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
I just wanted to throw out that I remember Kyle Pitts' first touchdown in the NFL, and I believe his only touchdown from his rookie season, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Came in London. So maybe,
really? That's his spot.
Well, the joke was for the rest of the season, and like I said, maybe he got one more later in the season, but the joke for much of the season was Kyle Pitts had never scored a touchdown in the United States.
I think you're right about that.
So maybe he runs it back. Maybe we can get this.
Maybe. Okay. So everyone hates Arthur Smith. Boy, he's terrible for Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and he's a fantasy owner's worst nightmare, and everyone's mad at Pitts. I don't think Smith hurts Pitts that much. And I don't think Pitts hurts Pitts at all. It's just every week Mariota or Ritter misses him deep downfield that would immediately make him a top 12 tight end. I mean, that's not a hard thing to get to, a top 12 tight end.
Yeah.
I mean, one big play and you're there. They leave a big play on the field every game, and he's open. He's doing his job, and that's why I can't quit him. I mean, the average depth of target is deep. It's just the quarterbacks never get him the football accurately.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I kind of feel there's just not much more to say at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I even said something like this earlier this week. We know we love Pitt's talent. I'm certainly not ready to give up on him by any stretch, but we're just going to have to stay patient. Still very, very young. It's just a wait and see game. I do like the matchup this week for what it's worth, though. Jacksonville's given up 2 tight end 1 games already. They're among a large group of teams who have done that, but 2 out of the 3 games they've given up a tight end 1 performance. I did have to check the numbers on Pitts, by the way, Matt, and his rookie season scored 1 touchdown. That was in London. So
okay,
let's run that back and do it again.
Yeah, giddy up.
Scored a whopping 2 touchdowns his second season. So we're 2.5 years in, 2+ years in, and we're sitting at 3 touchdowns. Dallas Goedert is another player off to a poor start. And Matt, he has not even come close. Of course, got goose egged in week 1, did not catch a pass, ended up being tight end 50, tied with every other tight end that didn't score a fantasy point that week. And then followed that up with tight end 23 and tight end 28 finishes. This week gets the Washington Commanders, who have only given up 1 tight end 1 game so far. What do you think about Dallas Goedert? Both this week and long term. I know you're a fan. Are you getting worried?
I am. Not so much. Hurts has not been super sharp, and they just run the ball so much. And we know he's 3rd on the pecking order, but none of these things are shockers or, it's not Garrett Wilson getting dealt a bad hand,
Well, I mean, I guess I just think, and you can kind of hear this and see this every week. You look at the top 12 tight ends, and by the time you get down to tight end 10, 11, 12, those guys are scoring like 6 fantasy points, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
8,
yeah.
maybe 8, right? I mean, it doesn't take much to break into that tight end 1 group.
Not
And
at
for
all.
Goddard, I mean, he hasn't even been a top 20 tight end this year. Really, really big disappointment. The last guy on my list here, David Njoku, also has not been among the top 20. He's given us fantasy finishes of tight end 28, 27, and 23. And this week gets the Baltimore Ravens, who have yet to allow a tight end 1 game. I mean, we already kind of know the problems with this Browns offense. Watson has, for the most part, struggled, maybe starting to come back around, and Nick Chubb's gone. So, I mean, it's kind of Amari Cooper, and that's pretty much it, right? I mean, we like Jerome Ford, but as far as the passing game goes, I don't know if we can trust 2 or 3 pass catchers in this offense.
100% agree with everything you said. Although I think Watson is coming off his best game as a Brown.
Yeah. Yes.
He's controlled the football better, was more accurate with it, looked more comfortable, had a one goofy play where he threw the ball backwards, but okay. But the one thing I wanted to add, I mean, it sure seems like Elijah Moore is well ahead of Njoku in the pecking order, though. I mean, it's Cooper, and then, it's Moore, then Njoku. So
yeah,
maybe Watson just doesn't fancy him,
Well, I mean, of course, Elijah Moore was not there last year. DPJ essentially served as the wide receiver 2, and David Njoku really did have his best year of his career. And now we've seen him take a step back. Maybe that's because of Elijah Moore. Maybe they're going to use Jerome Ford more in the passing game than they plan to do with Nick Chubb out there. Regardless, Njoku, not a guy you can put in your fantasy lineups. Pretty big disappointment there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, I'm guessing we're going to be talking about a couple of these guys as dynasty risers, or at least getting back to where they belong after week 4. Hopefully we pick the right ones. Hopefully our listeners pick the right ones from that group.
A lot of talent on those lists, though. A lot of talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We got to get Joe Burrow going with that Bengals offense. Come on. That's going to do it for today's show. Please make sure you download and subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL. And I'm Ryan, MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.